So now, on to today's topic, which is Business Process Management and the Single Customer View. This topic will be presented by Shaukat Desai, who's an architect in Oracle Service-Oriented Architecture, Business Process Management and Customer Experience Solutions. Helping Shaukat with Q&A is Rania Nambapiri, who's another Oracle sales consultant based in Bangalore, who's also an expert in Oracle Server Technologies. So now I'll hand you over to Shaukat.
Thank you very much, Natalie, and once again, welcome to all of you for joining this webcast today. So, as the topic today is BPM and Single Customer View, this is an agenda that we've put together for this session. So firstly, we're going to cover what is Single Customer View, just get a broad definition for it, and then look at the value of having Single Customer View in an organization, and then just touch upon some of the challenges associated with getting Single Customer View implemented in an organization. And then I'm going to introduce you to something called the typical customer journey mapping, something that we do very heavily at Oracle with our customers in terms of mapping customer journeys, and kind of relate that back to why Single Customer View is important. And then talk about Oracle Customer Experience Platform, basically a solution that we offer our customers in the customer experience space, but at the same time talk about how Single Customer View helps with the CX platform, and then finish off with a demo and a Q&A session. So, Single Customer View, one definition is it's an aggregated, consistent, and holistic representation of the data known by an organization about its customers. So let's, for example, assume that it's an individual we're talking about here. So then it's all the personal details of that customer, the name, address, date of birth, but it's also a change of circumstances. So for example, previous address, billing address, they might have changed address because they've moved houses, or that individual has got married. So, initially when we started working with this particular customer or transacting, they were single, and at some point during this sort of journey they got married, so the change of circumstances. On top of that, all of the products and services they have purchased. So for example, you're a high street retailer and they've purchased a bicycle 10 years ago and now they've got married, and there's a potential here that they're looking for bicycles for their children. Or you've leased a car from a hire company, right? So you've got a 24 months lease and you've took it out from a hire company. So all this information, the cars you might have changed. And then to extend that further, any complaints or service requests that you might have raised. So imagine, you provide boiler cover, a home care service as part of your service and product that you offer customers. How many times has this particular individual or household made a call out to one of your engineers, or I've had a problem with their car and I had to take it into a garage. So information relating to complaints and services, and then any documentation associated with that customer. So most organizations, when they're doing transactions or business, will have some sort of documentation associated with an individual, a company, and or product or transaction. So for example, signed terms and conditions. So that's the definition of, or a broad definition of what Single Customer View means. Now let's take a look at a quote from Gartner in terms of what the value of a Single Customer View is to an organization. So by achieving the single view, an organization is able to understand a customer's history, their lifetime value, which is quite important, the lifetime value of it, risk, potential exposure to debt, how many products they hold, and even the opportunity to sell new goods and services. So what this allows you to do is, once you have Single Customer View in your organizations, to better market yourselves. Nowadays the marketing budget is set, but it's getting tighter and tighter, and it's supposed to be more and more targeted towards the demographic that you're trying to appeal to. So being able to target products and services that are relevant to that individual or company, reduce the risk from bad debt. So a lot of organizations write off, anything between 2 and 5% of their annual turnover on customers who are defaulting on their payments. So take the boiler cover, for example. You're on a monthly payment, and 3 months into the payments, the customer stops paying, or you've leased a car, etc. Ultimately, the objective is to provide a much better customer experience and at the same time achieve loyalty and returning customers, which will result in a higher satisfaction score and a much more profitable business. So now we've looked at what a definition of a single customer view is. We've looked at what the value of having a single customer view in an organization is. What I would like to do is to talk about some of the challenges associated with getting a single customer view. So again, as a quote at the top from Gartner, 40% of businesses still have more than 80% of their customer data scattered all across their enterprise. So there's a subset of information about a customer in one system and another system. So let's take an example of a customer who's changed address several times, but also has got married and then got divorced. Now, depending on the line of business that you're dealing with, they'll only have a subset of that information, which means you'll get repeat or things through the post which is not relevant. You'll get email from one of their campaigns, again, which is not relevant, and ultimately will result in a bad customer experience, which means customers will just move to another brand. And in today's time of Amazon and Facebook and all the other sort of, on the tap kind of services available and products available in organizations, it's very, very easy to move brands. The second quote from Harvard Business School is actually very important as well. So it costs 5 to 10 times as much to win a new customer as it does to keep an existing customer. So basically what we're saying is you're spending it's much more kind of, it takes a lot more money to win a new customer than it does to retain an existing customer. But if you get customer loyalty, you're automatically going to get an increase in profitability, and they're quoting 75% here. And the reason is, once you've captured a customer, it's easy if you look after them and give them the satisfaction scores and the customer experience that people are looking for, then they are easily going to be spending more money with you rather than switching brands or going to a different organization. So just a very quick introduction to something what we call in Oracle the customer experience story. So this is very much focused around a business to consumer or even a B2B type situation. So typically what happens is an organization or an individual will have a need for a particular product or service. So winter's approaching, I need boiler cover, I'm going on holiday, I need insurance, or I need to hire a car for the weekend, right? So you've got a need. You do some research, you select a product, and then you'll purchase that product or service. So this is what we call the buy cycle. And then once the transaction is completed, you move into the owning cycle, which is you'll receive the goods, you'll actually use them, and then there's a maintenance phase. And depending on your experience with the product and your satisfaction, you'll either recommend it or you won't. So this particular infinity loop, kind of describes typically what happens in the buying and owning, phase of somebody looking for a product or service. But it's not as simple as that. Typically what happens is, because we've got access to so many different technologies and services and products now, at the top is the buying and owning cycle, so the need, research, selection, purchase, receive, and maintenance. But if we look at the left, there's many more channels and interaction points now. So gone are the days where you've got to walk into a shop to look at a product. Now you can just browse it online. Gone are the days when you're asking friends and family, when you meet them face to face about a particular product or service they might have had. Now you just go online and you ask, on forums, or you ask on Facebook, or you might tweet about it and get a response, right? Now you've got mobile phones where you can have, trip reviews, for example, where you can see, people socially coming together and giving feedback and reviews on their experience of a particular hotel or resort or a car they've purchased. So you can imagine now, there's so many different interaction points, and there's a very high risk, even if you've captured that customer at one interaction point. Say, for example, you've got a wonderful website and, the customer's very happy about one of the product. The minute they move into a different space or a different interaction point, there's a potential risk of losing that customer to a competitor. So it's a very, very challenging environment now for a lot of organizations who are offering products and services because of all these different interaction points. So single customer view requires that, you have information about the customer, or providing the customer the relevant information at every single touch point that we've just discussed across all of the different channels, but also the right information that's relevant to that individual. For example, I might have a favorite airline that I use on a frequent basis from my local airport from Manchester. I don't want to be receiving information in my inbox about offers from London, because there's no way I'm going to be traveling from London. So automatically my satisfaction, my experience with that brand starts going down to the point where I start ignoring their marketing campaigns because it's not relevant anymore. And then finally, available to those that actually need it. So you've got the customer who needs information, about products and services they've purchased and what you have to offer, but at the same time making sure that people in your organization, be it the contact center or the relationship manager, or depending on the line of business you're in, any interaction you have with the customer, making sure that the person from your organization has the right information about the customer. So the things we've already talked about, the customer's history, the products and services they've purchased, their lifetime value, or their valuable customer. So for example, you might be with a telco for the last 5 years, you've increased the services you get from them, to friends and families, and now you have 3 contracts from them. Now, if you decide you're going to leave them because of a poor customer satisfaction or experience, the value to that particular telco is they're going to lose 3 customers in one hit. So this is quite important. And then finally, be able to sell them new goods and services, right? So every interaction point is a potential opportunity to sell new goods and services. An example that I know of firsthand is about basically a friend of mine who works for a big national car hire company. So they make their customers fill out a satisfaction form at the end of each time they walk into a branch. And the area manager rates the branch and the branches is looking after based on the satisfaction score rather than the revenue, because this particular organization has worked out that if the satisfaction score is high, there's a direct correlation with the amount of profit that particular branch generates. So there's a lot of organizations who picked up on this, and as a result, what they have done is they've created roles for chief CX people. So for example, chief customer experience officers who are sitting alongside the rest of the CXOs and the CMO and the CIO, for example. Here's basically it's not just a problem for a particular industry. So it's not just in the retail space, but the single customer view problem is spread across every single vertical industry. So let's take the banking one as an example. Over the last 3 or 4 years, we have seen a number of organizations, number of banks which have been acquired. So for example, NatWest has been acquired by RBS, Virgin Money has acquired Northern Rock. So when they acquire companies, of course they're acquiring the actual customer information. Now, if you're already an RBS customer, because you might have your business account with them, and then you're a NatWest retail customer, and you walk into a branch, and the relationship manager doesn't actually figure out that you have 2 sets of accounts for 2 different types of transactions, and start selling you a business account when you walked into NatWest. Of course, that once again results in poor customer experience. At the same time, it's also about risk and compliance in real time. In the insurance sector, it's a very, very price-sensitive market now. Everybody's going on to price comparison websites. So what differentiates you from your competitors is the service you give to your customers. So they have an accident and they need to make a claim. What experience did they receive? Did they get multi-car discounts? So if you've got 2 policies under one household, but you need to be able to have access to this information. And then again, the telco space, every single person's got a smartphone or some sort of phone now, and it's very easy to go online and compare the market. So what differentiates you from your competition? So being able to understand the customer's history, the kind of usage, all those different additional things, and then be able to work out, based on their background, what the likelihood of them buying additional services like insurance or bolt-ons. Retail space we've already covered. It's a very with all the different interaction points, and those companies that don't basically embrace the new wave or the new way of doing business are going to get left behind. Another new kind of trend which emerging in the UK especially is around the single patient view. It's just a matter of time before, an individual will be able to take their healthcare needs to any service provider. So again, to be able to have this holistic view about the patient's history, but also, across the different departments and disciplines is very, very critical. And then finally, single citizen view in the public sector. So, public sector is now more and more accountable. People asking difficult questions. So again, being able to provide that, experience to your citizens around, raising taxes, controlling fraud, benefit claims, etc., is, vital. So let me introduce you to the Oracle CX Solutions platform. So basically, Oracle has been operating, across all the different vertical industries, for the last 30, 40 years. So we've gained an immense amount of experience on, best practice, industry reference models, etc. And we've come up with a platform which helps organizations be able to, roll out their CX initiatives. So as you can see from the slide at the top, we have all the different interaction points from your sort of legacy web channels to, for example, your contact center, direct sales, all the different ways organizations or individuals are going to be interacting with your company. And then we have a solution for marketing, for commerce, for sales and service. And surrounded by that is, the cloud trends that are emerging. A lot of organizations have a hybrid approach now where they have on-premise and cloud-based technologies. But at the same time, things like Twitter are getting more and more popular, especially in the retail space. And customers should, need to be able to understand the sentiment. So, for example, I've called out an engineer to repair my boiler. He turns up without the right information. He's got parts for a different boiler. And as a result, I've gone without hot water and heating for 2 days. So what do people do? Well, the first thing they do is they just tweet about it to, kind of release their frustration at times. And, customers or businesses need to be able to capture that sentiment and be able to action it. But at the same time, you have individuals who've got a social profile, a LinkedIn profile, a Twitter profile. And then they might actually have, their standard sort of name and address. Being able to link the two together and use that information to work out, the products and services that you can then, present to that individual is quite critical. Underpinning all of this sort of solution footprints is what we call the CX Foundation, the glue to bring all of this together, to be able to provide the right information to all of the different things like marketing, commerce, sales, and service. So let me just focus on that a little bit more. So CX Foundation, when you explore that box further, is actually made up of a number of different components. At the heart of it, there's an enterprise service bus, which is integrating or communicating with all of the different things like commerce, sales, service, and marketing. And then underneath that, it's basically reading or taking or getting information from different parts of your enterprise using an organized way, using what we call the service-oriented architecture. So on the left, first we have the single customer view services. So every time somebody comes online to a channel or to your website and they log in, you need to be able to present to them, information that's relevant, right? But at the same time, if you've got a relationship manager, they need to have a view of, all the things that we talked about, lifetime value, the customer's history, change of circumstances, so they are able to give them a much better service. And then we have business process management services. So typically what happens is each of these applications, normally, if you take the sort of legacy applications, will have their own sort of workflows. So a workflow will start in commerce, and then some of it will basically run in the sales application, and then in the order fulfillment, and then, in the provisioning, and then in the billing. So what you have is work or business processes that don't span across all the different applications, but a true business process does span across applications, across lines of business, and also across geographic locations. So the business process management is actually quite critical. So let's take an example of order management. We capture an order, we fulfill and we service that order, and then we do the billing. Well, what we are recommending in the foundation is that the entire business process is done at this particular layer, and you're just interacting with the various different applications in terms of what you need in terms of access to certain bits of data. And then decision services, which are critical. A very simple example might be, you want to apply discount to a loyal customer, 5% automatically for a particular season because you're running a campaign. So be able to, change that based on certain parameters on the fly without changing systems and spending forever rolling this out is very important. Again, I mentioned content management services before, so this is documentation associated with individuals or organizations that you're keeping. So for example, I walk into a high street bank and I'm looking for a loan, but I'm already a mortgage holder there. I've also got household insurance there, but at the same time I might also have a current account. And all of these different products and services will have documentation associated with it. And some of it might be relevant or might have not expired depending on the timescales. So in order to kind of give a much better service, if the branch person has got this information available to them, they're able to make decisions quicker. And then moving on to the web and mobile services. So most organizations are now providing some sort of mobile application, basically whether it's from a sales perspective or simply just as a brand, they want to have presence on somebody's mobile device, to be able to provide those services. And then finally, data integration services. Ultimately, data needs to be moved from different applications into data warehouse, and being able to do this is quite important. So at the heart of it is, like I said, an enterprise service bus, and we have all of these different services which are interacting with the various different applications within the organization to provide you with this foundation layer, which ultimately feeds into all of these different applications which are interacting with the customer. So we've talked about what single customer view is, what the value of single customer view is, challenges associated, and then we've just looked at a typical customer journey and looked at all the different interaction points, and then the different challenges within the industry sector. So what I'd like to do is finish off with a demo. It's a very, very simple demo. We have somebody called Kim Anderson. She's basically already an account holder or an existing customer of a brand called ATG store, and she wants to buy a new dress for the weekend because she's going out to a party, and she wants to change her personal details. So I want to just demonstrate when Kim changes her details, what it means from a back office perspective, and how that information is sent real time to all the different systems that are interested in this change. So if I just move this across. So we've got ATG store. Kim logs on to my desktop. Now what we see is their personal details. Now again, this is coming from a single customer view. We could, for example, have we do have orders on the left-hand side, so all the things that she's purchased in the past. Give her the facility to reorder that information, reorder that particular product again, and at the same time, maintaining a wish list, etc. So she goes into the section that she's looking for. So she moves into the item. She starts browsing. Looks like she's not buying a dress. So she's going to click on checkout. So she decides she wants to change the shipping address because the address she has currently is her work address. So a typical sort of form to change her details, and then she clicks on the save address. So as Kim is saving the changes, what happens is that triggers an event on, so this is the actual CX Foundation layer underneath that particular Oracle Commerce ATG store. So as that change happened, the service bus kicked off a BPM process. And the BPM process basically has a list of all the different applications within the enterprise who are interested in a change of that particular type. So in this case, it was an address details change. So as that change came down, it was the BPM process picked this up and then pushed the change out to all the relevant applications. So it's what we call the customer change, synchronizing customer change process. So this particular BPM process is now responsible for all the different changes. Now, from a front-end perspective, the ATG store doesn't actually need to know where this change is being propagated to real time. Now, the beauty of this kind of solution is as soon as the order has been placed and Kim picks up the phone and tries to talk to somebody in the call center and says, right, I've just placed this order and, there's a problem with it. The call center agent is looking at the right delivery address, right? Because it's not batch-based or overnight changes are happening, this information is real time. So in this particular case, Kim is going to be able to resolve a problem without any issues. So as you can see, there's all these different downstream systems that are affected by this change, and the change is propagated, in real time. So Kim then selects a shipping method, and then the billing section is changed, is displayed. Now again, she can edit that information, and once again, the service bus will pick this up, call the BPM process, which will then propagate the changes real time to all the different systems that are subscribing to that particular change. So the order's been placed. That order then is sent on the service bus. So this is a new order event, and then it calls out to the fulfillment system, which is then going to basically fulfill the order. And if there was a billing system, a separate billing system, that also would have kicked in. So that's the end of the demo, and hopefully what you saw there was a very, very simple change as far as Kim is concerned, but at the same time, rather than having her information dispersed across all the different applications, there is a central point which is managing this, ultimately feeding into a single customer view repository, a master data management, and then making sure that all the different applications that need a subset of that information, everything is kept in sync. So that's the end of the presentation and the demo. If there are any questions, I'll take them now. So there's a question here from one of the attendees. How easy is it to add a new system that's interested in the change? Well, that depends on that particular application. As long as there's a way of accessing or interacting with that application, it's what we call, an API, some method of accessing that application to read and write data to and from it. Then it's very easy, because the CX Foundation is a very, very rich platform which has all the capabilities of interacting with almost any application that you possibly could have in your enterprise. So it's just a case of plugging the additional application into the BPM process, which will very easily then mean that the next time there's a change, the BPM process and the service bus will work out who's interested in this change, and then at real time send this information to that application. Just checking if there's any other questions. So there's another question here about, you know, where do you, if you've got subset of data across all the different applications, are you mastering it somewhere? Yes. So we have something called the Customer Hub. And the Customer Hub ultimately is mastering the information around the customer, all the different things that we've discussed, address, detail, change. And then there's all these different applications that have subsets of the customer details. We have a link basically using a unique ID between the different applications. So for example, the ATG store that we saw earlier, you know, that might have partial information about the customer as we saw when Kim logged in, but that information ultimately, you know, even though it's partial, there's a link to this master repository, a customer hub. So when there's a change in the ATG store, that change is propagated to the repository and at the same time all the other applications. So there is a mastering sort of customer hub, which is underpinned by this as well. Any other questions? Okay, how can we provide, another question I have just here is around can we reuse this for our organization? So if you get in touch with Oracle, hopefully, well, not hopefully, somebody will get in touch and kind of basically explain to you in a bit more detail, give you a drill down of all the different components, you know, how we've kind of brought them together and all the different kind of interaction points and things that you need to consider, etc. So there is a contact us option on the website itself. So as Natalie said earlier, all of these webcasts are recorded. They're on this particular link, launch.oracle.com, UK Ireland Tech Webcasts. You can replay this webcast there. And, you know, if you've got any questions, feel free to get in touch. Our details will be on that website as well. So thank you for your time and thank you for listening.